Hi everyone. So today we're going to be speaking to Anna and Marius, who are going to talk to us about the living with a brain tumor from a carer's perspective. So Anna or Marius, I wonder if you could just introduce yourselves and just tell us a bit about your story and what we're going to talk a bit about today.
Yeah, of course we didn't really pre-agree who'd say what, but yes, so we were both working full time. We've got three sons, two in their 20s, who is one a late teenager, and our middle son Freddy he'd already moved out, was living in a flat, commuting to work in London. One evening he walked into a staircase in a bar at a party, and there was a big family joke that he'd had a bit too much to drink, and he got sort of funny eye symptoms, felt a bit weird, went to the doctor and optician a couple of times, and he had a bit of double vision, and after a couple of false starts was sent off to an eye clinic, and the ophthalmologist took a look and said, "Oh, I think you better go and have an MRI." Out of an abundance of caution, next day went for an MRI. We were both busy working away, and his brother took him to the MRI because he was having trouble seeing for driving. And the next thing, we were getting urgent calls at work to say, can you come down to the hospital down in Kent, because Freddie's been referred to A&E. And the next thing was an emergency admission to King's Hospital, which is when we met members of your team, and within a week Freddie had been diagnosed after a biopsy with a serious, very large brain tumor, sort of grade 3 anaplastic astrocytoma, which can behave like a grade 4. So all a complete shock in the space of a week before Christmas 2019. Yeah. Bit of a change of our lives for since then.
And I guess
it's all in, really. We're no experts. Most people aren't, of course, for any type of tumour. And it's you're both trying to adjust your own thinking, but also at the same time trying to keep calm and, of course, give as much support to Freddy, who, is a double shock for him, of course, far worse than for us. And I suppose as a parent, it's a balance between more than controlling your own emotions, but giving the feeling to Freddy that we'll do whatever it takes, and as well as the expert advice that we get from your team. And that we'll do whatever he wants us to do in order to make his life as straightforward and as comfortable as possible. So it's that sort of balance. It's controlling your own emotions, but as a parent, dealing with your own child as well, or a young adult, really.
And I guess from like you say, you have a young adult who's living his life, and all of a sudden you become carers, and I guess maybe we could talk a bit about, for you guys, how that transition happened and how you your roles almost change in the family, and how you navigated that together, allowing Freddie independence but also supporting him.
Yeah, I mean, it was extremely tough for him. So he'd been living in a flat in Kent, commuting. He loved driving his car, and then one minute doing that, and the next minute you're not allowed to drive. So he had his tumor affected his vision, so he's got no sight to the right side of his nose, so not allowed to drive. Really quite difficult living on his own. So at the start, obviously, you're recovering from the biopsy. His situation was we were advised that he couldn't have surgery because of the size and nature of the tumor. One of the things we did, there was a lot of practical stuff at the start. So we actually got a second opinion on that one, which was, the King's team were very good and said, absolutely no problem, you go and do that. And we also spoke to Freddie's employers, so they understood the situation. Both of us were in full-time work. I was a lawyer, Marius a college lecturer, and at the start you just drop everything. It's just like, you know, as if you're off sick. So there's a lot of dumping on colleagues, and we found that it was, I know some people find it quite hard to talk about, so from the practical side we found it helpful to actually tell people what was going on, not just, oh, you know, he's got a brain tumor, but actually a bit more about the nature of the brain tumor, so people understood how serious it was and actually gave you the space to kind of work out how to adjust your lives. I ended up retiring early. I probably would have been inclined to do that anyway. It wasn't because of COVID, as a lot of people are saying that with people in our age group. We were lucky enough to be able to have that choice, and Marius has become a lot more flexible in his work. And of course it varies a lot because different people's brain tumors behave in different ways. Freddy's was very aggressive, so his treatment had to be very aggressive at the start, and the treatment itself gives you setbacks, so, you know, difficulties with mobility, feeling crap the whole time, and so we were just there to sort of help him through it. A lot of practical stuff, so helping with appointments, accompanying him to radiotherapy and chemotherapy appointments, asking lots of questions, which at the time, because he's in a situation of, you know, surprise really, and being a bit stunned, and so we did a lot of the asking of questions and giving him the space to ask questions and discuss things, so that and I think ask questions. One of the bits of advice is, you know, don't be frightened to ask. If you realize after an appointment that you're actually not quite sure what you've been told or what all the options are, of course there's a lot of looking up things you can do online, but that, you know, you have to be quite careful about that. It might help you marshal your thoughts and the questions that you need to ask the medics in particular, and also get in contact with other people who've had similar experiences, whether that's through websites like the Brain Tumour Charity or through the King's sort of newsletter information service, which you're very involved in. Those sorts of things all help. I don't know if you've got something to add.
No, it does it very well. I think it's a comfort, if you like, for both Freddy and us, is we've got a sort of system in place. So, you know, when we're worried or we want to check something up, we can go direct to you. Our GP is terrific, knows the family very well, obviously, and you know, we don't have a hotline to him, but the surgery and the staff at the surgery are aware of Freddy's condition. So, you know, if we want to get in there or get a blood test or do something, then they're very approachable, and that helps us as well. We've got our local chemist where all the prescriptions are emailed to. You know, they're very understanding. So over the last 3 or so years, we've got these sort of groups, if you like, where we know we need to go to if we need to get some advice or help, or we're confused about something, or we need an extra so we can go to either you or double check with the chemist or go to the GP and so on. And obviously if our own GP isn't available, you know, the other team that are there are straight on it. And that's you know, that is a real strength, because when you're dealing with such a serious illness.
Yeah, it's very difficult times. I mean, on the practical side, one of the things that, because I'm a lawyer, I tend to write things down, and at the start I was trying to track Freddy's symptoms. So he had a lot of medication. He was on a lot of steroid treatment at the start because he had a very inflamed brain, which is what was causing the double vision. and that's prepared him for the radiotherapy, and then he had his chemotherapy, and at the same time you have your anti-sickness drugs, your your pain relief drugs, and so on. And he actually was very good at sort of looking after his medication regime, although there were times when he was too ill to be able to really cope, so he had to be on top of it. So I used to write things down. I created spreadsheets at the start, but then after about 6 months, we discovered the Brian app, which is an app that's published by the Brain Tumour charity, and it's incredibly useful for tracking medication levels and symptoms and seizures if seizures are involved. So that's a sort of practical thing, and it's developed even since we've been using it to make it more user friendly. You can have it on your iPhone. Freddy's tumour has affected his speech and communication because it's sort of on the left side, and his iPhone has become like a bit of an, I think his consultant said it was sort of outsourced part of his brain, because there are things he can do with his iPhone where, when he has difficulty with sort of reading and understanding, he can get it to dictate to him, he can dictate to it. There are speech therapy apps that you can use on it. And a lot of this stuff, our starting point was looking at the charity website. So particularly the Brain Tumour charity happens to be one that we've used a lot. So yeah, use of technology. Some of the things that he's done 20 years ago, just he wouldn't. His quality of life would just not have been as good, because he's been able to be like keeping in touch with friends. And that's another very important thing. I think at the beginning, you sort of, it was Christmas, so the immediate family all gathered round, and everyone else kind of stayed away because they're not quite sure what to do. But actually making sure that Freddy is kept in touch with his friends and his work colleagues has been great, and to just keep a bit of an information flow with them, so that either helping the tumour sufferer to actually keep in touch themselves, or if sometimes you need to sort of give a bit of information behind the scenes about what's going on, because people aren't quite sure what to say or how to deal with it. So helping with that communication and making sure that they stay in touch with friends and family and work colleagues is I'd say quite an important part of the role of carer.
Maybe we could put some of the links. Sorry, Marius.
Sorry. Okay. It all depends on the individual, because some people who are suffering from the tumour may us to be me, actually, if it was me, would hide away and don't want to see anybody and don't want to talk to anybody. So, you're demanding the character. In Freddy's case, he's very pragmatic. He doesn't shy away from that. As Anna says, he's very organised. He's got all his pills in a sort of timer, what do you call it? It's got 8 different compartments, and he sets the time when he wants to go. And he's done that for months and months and months. And he's very, very organised and very diligent in that way, if you like. So that's actually very, very helpful. But he's not one of these people where, I was saying the other day to a friend, if his firm were to have been terrific with him, very supportive, but if they were to come and say, okay, when you're back, we're going to give you this, or we're saving this project for you when you're back, and that sort of stuff, he knows the seriousness of the situation. He's managing it, and we're all supporting him in that respect, and they are doing that as well. So he's very practical and level-headed, actually, amazingly so, really, for a young man. Really, really impressive. And as Anna says, also the support of his friends as well as his firm have been brilliant. They're in touch all the time, even if they come down and see him, obviously, but you can't come down every day or every week, so they've all got their own lives, and he appreciates that. But they're on WhatsApp, and they're dealing with, they're on the phone lots, and so he feels he's not left to himself. He feels his life, as much as it can, is continuing social life is continuing in that way.
Yeah.
I just wonder, because you guys are such an amazing unit, all of you together support each other. So a key member of the team there.
This is the boss. This is the boss.
I just guess to round up for we've talked a lot about Freddy and how wonderful he is, but you guys are doing an incredible job, incredible. And I wonder if there's any sort of top tips you could give to other people that are going through this as a carer, from a caring perspective, things that have, you've found helpful. We can put some of the links to some of the things that we said at the bottom, maybe.
Yeah.
But just some things that you found, or hard, easy or hard,
I think sort of, well, one of the most important things is actually trying to stay fit and healthy yourselves. I think because there's a tendency, if you've got someone unwell in the family, you're going to focus on them, and particularly in Freddy's case, we've had sort of crises and sort of hospital emergency admissions and that sort of thing, and so and obviously in the heat of them, when that's going on, it's just all hands on deck. You concentrate on that. You go to hospital if you can, which was sometimes in COVID we weren't able to. But we both now spend more time gymming, swimming, cycling, walking the dog than we ever did before, because it just is really important to stay. Just keep yourself with a fit body and mind, and that just means you're more able to help with the problems that Freddy's going through. So I think that's a really key piece of advice. Accept help from friends and family, because if you are in a situation where you're all living together the whole time, it wasn't his plan, it wasn't our plan, it wasn't his plan, and it's very, it's really nice sometimes to get a bit of a break, have other friends to go out for meals or whatever, not always be together, because everyone's situation is different, but don't feel you've got to do it alone. And then just a couple of other practical things is just kind of do your research online as to what you might be entitled to. So in Freddy's case, because it has ended up being a disabling him, there are there are benefits available. The personal independence payment is something which quite a lot of brain tumour sufferers would be entitled to, regardless of income and so on. And there will be extra expenses. So it's something which we didn't even think about at the start. We thought, well, we're reasonably well off, but of course Freddy wasn't particularly, and you are entitled to some help. So take help where you can. I think those would be my key points.
I think recognising each other as a couple. I think that's, or if you're individual and you've got friends that are helping you live on, friends that recognise their responsibility.
I can't, Marius, you've just gone. I don't know if you've just come away from the speaker side. Just sort of your last final thing. We don't want to cut you off.
Just to recognise either your partner's strengths or best friends that are there to support you, and for them to realise we all handle these situations in a different way, don't we? There's no template. This happens, and what you do is X, Y, and Z. We all know that. So if you recognise that, so one of you might be sort of out and about and sort of talking about it and be quite open about it, and the other one may not want to do that or may not be ready to do that. But in my case, I didn't really want to talk about it for a good year, actually. So and then I sort of relaxed into it and so on. Well, not relaxed into it, adjusted, I suppose. And so there are, people, it's a bit like grief, actually. People deal with grief in in different ways. Some people want to talk about the person that's died straight off. The other person will run a mile to talk about that and so on. So it's recognizing what your other half can do, which will help you, and for them to say, okay, well, you know, I'm prepared to do whatever it is, but he isn't. Let's manage that. The other thing I would say is we were always thinking about getting a dog, and we brought that forward. And although she's slightly mental, not very mental, it gives you all of us a different focus. It's something positive, actually. So however your day is panning out, you still got to look after your dog, or a cat, look after the cat. I remember when my father died a long time ago, and the children were young, and my mother said shortly afterwards, I mean, so a few weeks afterwards, it's wonderful to have, you know, grandchildren, such young grandchildren, because it gives me a real positive focus in those sort of tricky months, you know, directly after he died. And in a sort of similar way, it's us thinking, and Freddy as well, actually, because he loves the dog and does lots with the dog. So it's a different aspect that you feel positive having something like that.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. I'm sure that people will be very grateful to hear, you know, from first-hand perspective. And like I say, maybe if there's anything you think would be helpful, we could put the links at the bottom of the video.
Yeah. We'll
Thank you so
send that
much.
through. Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
All
Thank
right.
you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.